We are back at it again, doing Pioneers and Builders in Jacksonville, Florida, the PB and Jax podcast. I am honored and privileged to have the incomparable Colonel Chris Budihas with me. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me today and allowing us to learn a little bit more about you.
No, that's awesome. Hey, Randall, good to see you, man. It's been we've only known each other for a little while, but it seems like we've known each other for a long time. So I appreciate having the opportunity to come on PB and Jax. I love what you're doing here and spreading the great word of what's happening across Jacksonville.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Likewise, we're going to get into what you've done in the same boat. I think that's why we've gotten along so well is military background, both sides. And then we come back, we're like, I don't think Jacksonville is what it should be. And I think we can do something about it. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously Jacksonville-based podcast. You're a Jacksonvillian. You're the whole gamut. It's from day one. You've been here.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty fortunate. So I'll give you a little background. So my dad was Navy. That's what brought us here. I got here when I was 3 years old. So it's interesting, right? So coming down here to Navy Town. This is back when Blanding Boulevard was 2 lanes north-south with a passing lane in the middle. Not like that anymore. Went to Orange Park High. When I was in high school, we moved out to Middleburg, about 5 miles north of Camp Landing. And I decided, it's funny. So my dad, he was pretty old school. He dropped out of high school when he was 16, enlisted in the Navy, and then went off and served his nation for almost 30 years. And so pretty tough guy. A couple stories on him. So one day, I'm like, hey, Dad, I'd like to get some money to go to Dairy Queen. He's like, that's good. And I'm like, can I get some money? He's like, you can earn some money. I'm not going to give you any money. I said, okay. How can I earn some money? He goes, why don't you go ask the neighbors if you can mow the lawn? And so I went over there. I talked to Mr. Gordy. He's like, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to have you come mow the lawn. I came back and said, Dad, can I use the lawnmower to mow Mr. Gordy's lawn? He's like, you can use lawnmower, but you got to pay for your own gas. So anyways, it was a long lesson of like, hey, if you want to earn something, you got to put the calories in. But those long lessons have done me very well. So pretty tough guy growing up. My mom was a school teacher who really raised us because he was put a lot of times. When I was coming out of high school, it's funny. My dad was like, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go to the University of Florida and basically pursue a commission. And he's like, he looked at my grades, and granted, my grades were really good until about, I don't know, until I learned what girls were in junior year and such. So they weren't I wasn't going to get a scholarship based on them. So anyways, I enlisted in the Marines and did 7 years enlisted in the Marine Corps. I was fortunate enough when coming out of Desert Storm, I was offered the opportunity to go seek a commission in the Marine Corps. And I came back here. I met my wife. We were dating at the time in San Diego, and we lived on the west side, the great side of Jacksonville, off of Lane Avenue in London Town Apartments. She worked downtown at Roger Towers as a paralegal, and I went to school over at JU, and eventually got my commission, and then went off to be an infantry officer in the Marine Corps for almost 7 years. And then I decided, I'm like, hey, I mean, that's a lot of time in the military, right? Almost 14 years. I said, I'm gonna take a chance. This is 2000. I'm gonna go into the corporate world because at that time there was a lot of recruiting for junior military officers, and so GE had a program. I jumped on board. It was a great experience. It was a lot of parallels in leadership from General Electric into what I was doing in the military. I was hired as a district manager. I lived in Orange Park, and I worked on Phillips Highway for GE IT Solutions. Ironically, I'm not an IT guy. So about 3 months into it, I asked my boss, I said, I was an infantry officer. I said, hey, boss, who happened to be a former Marine Harrier mechanic, jet mechanic back in the day. I said, why'd you hire me? I said, I'm not an IT guy. He goes, no, you're not, but you have leadership skills that you learn in the military. They're going to make you dependable. You're going to have integrity. You're going to work hard. You're going to take initiative when leadership is not around or is available. You're going to make sure that your folks are in the right uniform with the right attitude, the right place with the right equipment, so on and so forth. So that was one of many lessons I learned about the value in the things we learn in the military that directly translate into the business workspace. And lo and behold, that was 2000. Of course, 2001 happened. And I decided that I was going to go back on active duty. Now I was in the Marine Reserves, and they weren't going to activate me. So I decided a friend of mine that I got to know who was in the Ranger Regiment at the time, he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to get back on active duty." He's like, "Send me all your stuff." And then I sent it over to him, got it to the folks up at headquarters Marine Corps. And the next thing I know, I'm shipping off to Fort Benning, going to Ranger School, losing a little bit of weight, and then off and deploying to the global war of terrorism. So fortunately enough, the next 14 years of that, 13 years in the Marine Corps, and then the next 23 years in the Army, doing a series of jobs, commanding at various levels. So I've been very blessed. I had a conversation with somebody today about this. My success is not all mine. It's a tribute to the people I worked with and work for, and then my family, most importantly. So I'm lucky to come back here. My last, just people are like, "What brought you back here?" Ironically, yes, I thought I was going to come back here, but my last 2 years on active duty, I was a senior active duty oversight as a colonel to the Florida National Guard down in St. Augustine. So being down in St. Augustine, beautiful place, other than traffic and bad parking, but I love it down there. I lived in Europe for a little bit over 6 years, and it's like running through old Europe, and it's great. And I had the opportunity to with that job to do some nonprofit work that got me into a few things that I'm doing now, to include Client Focus Media, which I know we're going to talk about. And I decided I'm going to stay here in Jacksonville to give back to my community that I originally came from, in order to kind of, the whole saying, rising tide lifts all boats. Well, I want to help, raise those boats and help folks out, and be a contributing member to society. Fortunate in my life, and this is not bragging, but I've either lived, fought, trained, or traveled to 52 different countries around the world. And then I've also I've been, I think, 38, 39 states across the United States. So the breadth and width of that travel has been very, very positive to how I feel about things, how I see the world, how I see what's going on, in our communities, and how, other opportunities exist out there. Your great state of Texas. I've been in Austin. I'm going back to Austin next week. So a lot of great things going there. But I think we can glean opportunities by looking at how other people are doing things, to go, is that something we can do here based on the human and physical, and then the business variables associated with Jacksonville, or not? And then kind of consider those things and see if it's good for Jacksonville. There's a lot going on in the city that I'm looking forward to deep diving with you on. And I know it's a long preamble. I was not a chaplain, so I'm not preaching, but that's a little bit on Chris Budihas, a humble guy from Orange Park, Middleburg, who's been blessed throughout his life, who's happy to, increase his network of friends and people like you to make me a better person than I am. I know you're going to ask this, so I'm going to say it up front. I get asked this a couple of times a month, is like, when you were leaving the military, what did you want to do? And I said, the first thing I did is I wrote down what I did not want to do. And that was to wear a suit and go ride a cubicle. It's fine. Some people want to do that. That's great. I do have a military pension, which provides me, a little bit of comfort there. But I wanted to bet on myself and be an entrepreneur and be in the business world. And as I tell people, because people are like, "Hey, Colonel Chris Budihas, hey, I appreciate it. I'm really Chris, but the title, yeah, I earned it. But Colonel is what I did. It's not who I am. And I can contribute so much more to that conversation, because I think people, one, they thank you for your service because you're a veteran, and I appreciate that. But I do think some folks, maybe in the business world, are like, "Man, you're a veteran, you're a little bit older, so I'm going to invest time in you," so on and so forth. There could be some negative connotations to it. So like I tell people, take what you had in uniform, but don't wear it on your sleeve and expect that, you throwing around your rank means anything to anybody on the outside.
I agree. I do. However, you have given more than half of your life to serve this country and a cause that is much, 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 much bigger than you. It's so much bigger than me. And I view the Colonel Chris Budihas part as the Colonel. Hey, I did this, but I'm still Chris Budihas. The Chris Budihas thing still sits in there. So I see your point. I respect your point, and I'm sure everybody else does, but you did great work, and it should be recognized. So I'll leave it at that for this conversation.
Well, thank you for making me blush.
Yeah, for all of our conversations moving forward, I'll just call you Chris. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, just the Colonel parts, it does mean something. and in a military city where people understand how difficult it is to achieve the rank of 06, they get it. And I'm sure that's why they
No, I
attach it.
appreciate it. Like I said, all the credit goes to my family and goes to those folks I had the opportunity to work for and their sacrifices along the way. So, and I learned a lot from it. I learned probably as much from my failures as my successes.
That's where you learn. That's where you grow.
Right.
Is in the failures. Speaking of, you said something about traffic earlier, and you were talking about Blanding being one way. We want Jacksonville to grow, but not like Blanding. Just please, for the love of Christ, if you get past the Orange Park Mall and you're trying to get back to 295, forget about it.
Bless you.
Yeah, forget about it. 52 countries, 53 countries, 39 states. You're well traveled. I understand you're from here, but we're going to dive into your purpose and why you're working now.
Yeah.
Although, we know that you don't have to. But why did you decide, okay, yes, I'm coming back to Jacksonville, and yes, I'm establishing roots in Jacksonville, but why am I putting my purpose and my passion behind this particular city when I've seen all different types of states and countries and cultures and atmospheres? Why did you say, okay, Jacksonville, we have the plot, we just got to build it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to that. It's that gut feeling, right? Your spidey sense, like it's home, right? It's where you're from. You want to contribute back to it. The irony is when I was 18 years old, I said I was never coming back here. And so the joke on me was my first duty station was Kings Bay, Georgia for a year.
Not far away.
Now I'm back here. And I think there's one is it's home. That's a piece of it. Two is I don't think God put me in St. Augustine by accident. There was a reason that happened. My nonprofit work that I was doing. So I was so a couple years ago, born out of Uvalde, and I know you're from Texas, and everybody knows about the Uvalde mass shooting at elementary school. So an individual I'd been serving with in Baghdad back in 2006 to 9 time frame had reached out to me. He'd gotten out of the military, done a number of things in the private sector, and he had unfortunately gotten injured and was laid up after ankle surgery. And he lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And he's like, hey, sir, this is a problem. We got to do something about all these active shooter, all the school place violence and all this other stuff. I said, okay, here's some tools. So he didn't ask me to come on, he didn't ask me to participate in a nonprofit, just provided him some advice. And so I provided it. And then 6 months later, he calls me up. He goes, hey, sir, I need a non-paid COO to come in to help me run the organization. So through that process with National Overwatch, I learned a lot about school security and regulation, and in many cases, the lack of regulation, the lack of training, and a lot of other things associated with, protection of children in a school place. So ironically, I get an invitation from Dr. Wendy Norfleet, who's local here, and she invited me on a show, Movers and Shakers, down at Client Focus Media. And so I went down there and I was waiting for my interview. I didn't know what to expect. I went in there, and then the CEO, Mike White, came downstairs. He's like, who are you? And what are you doing here? And so we started talking. I explained who I was, what I was doing. He's like, wow, that's pretty powerful stuff. I said, yeah, it is pretty powerful. And I think we can do something about it as a community, either at the local, the state, or the national level. So we're just trying to make an impact as an organization. So him and I stayed in contact for a while, off and on. And then he reached out to me and he said, hey, I'd like, if you would like to host a show, I'm looking to call it Buzz on Veterans, the 5-minute salute. I said, okay, what's the difference? He goes, just the title. I said, okay. So, 7 to 10 minutes, bring the veteran on, talk about who you are, where you're from, and what are you doing in your post-military career. Really a great opportunity as part of his philanthropy of giving back, upwards of $2 million in free interviews a year. So with that conversation, I said, okay, what's the hook here? He's like, no hook. Now you come in. I said, I don't get paid. People don't pay to do it. It was a perfect, relationship there. So I've been doing that since last January. So January of 2024. And I told Mike, so I was getting ready to go on terminal leave or depart the military in July. And later that spring, I told Mike, going back to Chris, Colonel is who I was, not who I am right now. I said, I can do more than just be the token veteran on the team. I can, I have a long reach. I know a lot of people know me, no ego here, but I would like to give them a voice and do some virtual interviews outside of the Jacksonville area. So half of them were folks in the Northeast Florida region, Southeast Georgia, and other folks are even beyond here. Like today, I did an interview with somebody in Manchester, England, and last week somebody in Prague, both veterans, ironically. And so we expanded the show. So now I'm doing tech champions, artificial intelligence champions. I'm doing industry champions and building buzz, which is folks in the construction space. Through those interviews, Randall, I have met some of the coolest people. Because people ask me like, "Hey, Chris, how much are you getting paid to do these interviews?" The answer is nothing. But my soul and is full because of the awesome people I'm meeting. So and we can throw names out there if we choose to, but to keep everybody innocent, there is some amazing talent in this city. And going back to why Jacksonville. So growing up, I always heard like Duval County, Jacksonville, the biggest city in the nation, so on and so forth. And my wife, when she came here with me in 1991, she's like, this city has so much unrealized potential. And she's from San Diego. And that kind of resonated with me. So it was ironic. I heard Mayor Donna Deegan last August give an interview, and she was talking about that, the unrealized potential of this city. There's so much in this city that could happen if planned and thought through appropriately. And then there is things happening with a lot of talent, but nobody knows. So 2 points here. One on the unrealized potential. The unrealized potential doesn't need to be regulated by the government. Probably some government steerage. Obviously, there needs to be the appropriate amount of oversight or division of land, so on and so forth, through the city council and through the city itself. There's also got to be, as part of that unrealized potential, the right movers and shakers within Jacksonville area. And when I say Jacksonville, I include all the surrounding counties, because the urban sprawl of Jacksonville, and when you look at everything between geographical layout to include the business and industries that span beyond the Duval County boundaries, but influence the Duval County boundary, that all matters. Then geographically, because we had a conversation, Grant and I, when we first met, and Greg, and you did an interview with them, I think episode 2 or 3, is when you look at the geography, because going back to my travels, when I look at the world, I don't look at it myopically. I try to look at it in a series of frames, in and out. It's a constant in and out, constant in and out. And then you look at it in depth too. So when you do that, you see where if you use SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you can see where those things intersect. But you'll also see where the opportunities, exist on different planes, but you need connective tissue to get those things to connect. And some of those things that help to connect are like the JSEB. Some of those things that help connect are, some of the things that you're doing here with PB and Jax, 2 Men and a Microphone, all these different meetup events that are occurring across the city. When you have a like-spirited bunch of folks across Jacksonville and want to work together in a collective manner, not for, self-preservation per se, or to advance their own personal cause, but if they want to, as a business, do well, which we all want to do because we got to make ends meet, but we want to collectively work together for the betterment of the Duval County area and all the surrounding counties. Man, we can move the needle very quickly, and to see what's happening on there in Jacksonville with the growth of the city over the last 10 years, and then the projections of anywhere between 500,000 or greater of folks in the next decade means a lot. I don't want to go back to it, but Blanding Boulevard is a great example of when you do not properly urban plan your infrastructure, you're going to have a train wreck called Blanding Boulevard. So now that's where all the different entities I was talking about in our community has to come together to work together collectively. So it can be a great place to live for all the right reasons, and then be extremely functional. I mean, when you look at a port city with a great airport that's not in downtown, on the outer limits, that has land surrounded by it. Then you got the 95, and then the I-10 corridor. Then you expand it potentially to the corridor between here, Orlando, Tampa, Miami. That's powerful.
I agree. I'll let you answer this question. Austin, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Florida. What do they have in common?
They all three have a river.
They're all in tax-free states with a river flowing through the heart of downtown.
Amen. Yeah.
Two of those cities have taken advantage of it, and the third, you and I are trying like hell to make sure they do.
Yeah. And that makes you wonder, right? Like, so I've mentioned some folks, and you know the Capital Factory in Austin. I do too. I'm going there next week. Matter of fact, for an autonomous vehicle, think drones, aerial and ground drone conference there. And so some people are like, oh, we can't do it here. You know, Cap Factory is different. I've heard about the one in Houston. Station DC is going to open up here soon off of Union Station up in DC. But when I had the meeting with the various folks at the Cap Factory, and then a couple folks here that are influencers, my comment to them is we're not trying to copy and paste what you're doing.
No.
We are looking at our variables that exist here that will make sense to make a round peg go in a round hole and not force a round peg into a square hole. Because when that happens, you have failure, and when you have failure, people are just going to continue bringing it up like ancient history. Like, remember we did this? That was a failure. Remember we did this? That was a failure.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we're not trying to copycat. We are trying to replicate certain things, especially in the innovation market. Both of those cities, I lived in Austin before it was what it was. Most people do know this. The people that know me know this, and the people that don't know me, they're about to know this. The road I grew up on was called FM 620, Farm to Market 620. So it was a farm to market road. It is now a toll road. It's a different city. But what they did was they said, we had all this land. We're in this tax-free state. We're in this really cool city where they say, keep Austin weird. And we have all this live music. We have places where people can go hang out. There was an opportunity that was like, okay, California's taxes are ridiculous. We can get some major player type companies in here. And what ended up happening was it brought their entrepreneurs with them. So we had entrepreneurs, we had people with ideas, and now, Austin's called Silicon Hills. Nashville was just a town of country music and people getting hammered. And now it's a place of innovation and influence. And, there's a lot of high rises that are in downtown and really big corporations and people who are doing great things in the medical field. And so here in Jacksonville, we have a beach. They don't. We're not trying to replicate everything. We all have our own special thing, but how long are we going to talk about Jacksonville being the largest landmassed city in the United States? How long are we going to talk about that we're built on a city of potential? I'm tired of talking about it. I've been here 18 years. I'm tired of talking about it. I want to do something about it.
Yeah.
So obviously, as you said, PB and Jax was born out of that. I know that the conversations you have at Client Focus Media are born out of that. So how many shows are you at? You're at 7?
I've got 7 shows, and I'm doing on average, I would say on average 20 to 30 interviews, upwards of 40 a week.
With mostly people in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'd say about half are Jacksonville, the other half are beyond Jacksonville. And it's funny, off camera, those that are in Jacksonville will ask questions about Jacksonville because they hear things, and these are business owners. And they're like, you can see the wheels are turning, right? Unfortunately, I talked to somebody whose business was affected by the fires out in LA. And you could see when I was talking, the wheels were grinding. And it's a great place to be. And so, I love your point. Like, when are we going to stop talking about it and to kind of move it? But it's going to take, there's this video out there. And so ironically, not to bring up the military. So I had this general who was in the Joint Special Operations community for a number of years, pretty much most of his career. And then he would show his video. So it was like a rave, not a rave, but it was like this funky, hippie concert. And then the one guy goes out there, start dancing, and everybody's kind of talking about the one dude. It's kind of weird, right? And then another guy comes out there dancing with them. And then everybody's like, okay, it's okay. Everybody else goes out. So who's the first or second follower, right? Who's going to go out there and go, hey, we're going to do this, and then we're going to try it out. And then sometimes, hey, trying it out matters, right? So maybe we try it out and it doesn't work. It's okay. Now we got to do it with our eyes wide open because there's expenses associated with this. But we got some amazing people. I hate to throw out people's names and companies without first getting approved, but think about with Starcatcher, with Andrew Rush and what he's doing here. He is going to grow a amazing business that's going to affect all of space. He's putting it here in Jacksonville, Florida, native himself. And he's like, hey, if you want to work for Starcatcher, you got to live here and be part of the team. And, and he's just one of many organizations out there. And then when we talk to, people you and I know and people that we know separately, when you look at what are the core things this city does, and I tell people when a city does core things, don't get overly fixated on those things. You can do more than just that. But we're big in the medical and med tech. We're big in the fintech. There's a lot
Logistics.
going on in these different spaces, big into transportation. So how do we harness that energy of those things? We're big into banking too. And then what are the other things we need to do to be part of this? So, obviously I know Greg as you do, Greg Grant, but the undertone of the city is not just the big corporations, and that does matter. That's a matter of fact, it hugely matters. What drives the city and really the American economy is the small business leaders, right? From those tier 1 to tier 3 businesses. So how are we enabling them as a network of networks to help each other in order to be prosperous? And then, not all small businesses that start should be successful for a variety of reasons. One, product market fit, just, failure of leadership, or whatever they did is just not relevant anymore. But, as you and I went to a coffee shop this morning. I was telling the lady at Biddy and Bowes, though it's an enterprise, if you will, small enterprise, but a great organization, is I always try to support local. Supporting local matters to me, because we don't have local, support, then those shops won't exist. And then we'll be sitting around the house complaining, why do we only thing we have around here is Winn-Dixie's and Publix's? We have no place else to go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We have these great marquee things in Jacksonville. We can just innovate them. I think that's where we can catch up to these other cities, is making the spaces that we're in better by the use of technology, or trying to think about the different pain points, or try to find a different way to get the solutions delivered to your end clients or your customers in a meaningful manner. And, I'm not going to, same thing. I'm not trying to put anybody's business out there that doesn't want it. But this morning we talked to a gentleman who drew us a grid, and he goes, this is where all of the consumers of our product live. I want this. I want to be on this part of the grid, and I only want to identify with these people. Well, as you see it, you're like, that makes all the sense in the world, because now people will identify with your brand. And so it's just, the thing is that guy lives in Jacksonville. He's born and bred in Jacksonville. He's a Jacksonville guy. We have the talent.
Yeah.
And we have the people that are doing really cool stuff. It takes you and me to go like a fossil search, take the little brush, dust off the dirt, and try to find these people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just where we're at.
Get to network with other people, right? Because we know there's other people that can help, especially his product market fit. Very appropriate. The Jacksonville. Yeah. I love his diagram. I'm like, wow, that says something. And that's true analysis. That's why I think a lot of small businesses fail, because they don't do the proper analysis. And then they wonder why they're having issues. But you look at like what he's doing as a small business leader. We recently, last week or the week before, Matthew Chang with Chang Robotics and their capital fund, what he's doing there, and what he's doing with Matthew Chang Robotics itself. They don't bend. I've been to JU, been to robotics lab. It's great. They don't bend metal. They make the software that makes the robots work the way you need to, which is my opinion, is the secret sauce to it. So, when he builds that empire here, think about all the different talent that we can bring into the city, and then how that feeds upon one another. We got University of Florida putting a master's programs up here as part of a University of Florida campus up here. I know it's not FSU, but hey, I'm not sure what's going on between the city and FSU, but regardless, a great, college there coming in the city and investing. And then, we got a couple of great universities here. I mean, you look at what's going on at University of North Florida. When I was growing up, University of North Florida was like 2 buildings and 5 lakes and a bunch of woods. Not anymore. It's a big university.
It's a draw, period.
It is. Yeah.
Anybody that, like, if you see it off the highway, you can tell I'm a little passionate about this. If you drive past UNF on the highway, you'll never know. Turn right. If you're going like to the town center, instead of turning left, turn right and go into UNF and see what it is now. It is nuts.
It is.
It's nuts.
It's amazing what they're doing. And then, my old alma mater, which unfortunately for them, they're a bit landlocked, though they have bought up some land. Jacksonville University, it's a private university. And I tell you, the student to teacher ratio and the number of business, not business schools, but the different schools underneath the university, and include business, robotics now, or various forms of engineering and such. There's a lot going on in the city. And so when I was going to school there, I would say at least 40, it had to be more than that, more than 50% of the student population was not from Florida. So how do you educate and then want to have those people that intellectual property, if you will, stay here. You got to have a draw, and they got to want to live here for a variety of reasons. Hey, beach is good enough for me, but hey, between what's going on here, what's driving young people to want to stay here? Obviously entertainment, those things are important, but
It's really
opportunity,
work. Yeah, it's always going to come down to work. Yeah.
Yeah. When it comes down to work, because at the end of the day, if you're not happy, you're going to move. And so their ability to take on those initial positions and have all our different corporate partners at the most senior levels down to small businesses want to recruit those folks and bring them in. And then, it just builds an ecosystem that feeds upon itself, and you get great success through a long-term vision. As you have, I've talked to people here locally. You're kind of like, hey, Chris, you might need to get back on your meds. It's like, nah, I see a vision. We can get there. Where we're at and where we're going, it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be a change left, right. We're going to come back a little bit, but it's got to be a purposeful move. And that's why when I talk strategy to folks, the strategy, the term's thrown around all the time loosely. It's a long-term vision across time, space, with a look at risk associated with it. That's typically 5 years plus, but some people are like, well, 5 years is a long time. Well, it's not really. It depends, on the speed of what you do with your business. But yeah, we've when you put that overlay of academia on top of this, it's pretty great. And then you look at all the federal stuff that's going on here. You and I obviously know about the bases. People do forget that the National Guard has a huge presence down here in St. Augustine. Camp Landing across the river in St. Mary's is obviously it's Kings Bay, and then north of that is Fort Stewart, and then the Marine Corps base at Albany. So though it sounds very far, it's not. But that veteran community, when they get out, they can see this a beacon of light where they're like, I got opportunity there. I want to go ahead and see if I can set roots there and have a meaningful life in my post-military career.
100%. As you were referring to what success is going to look like, the mental picture I have is it's going to look like a pretzel. We're literally going to cross left and right, and we're going to go over things multiple times. It's not going to look linear, but I think you and I specifically, we're prepped and ready for that.
Yeah.
And the other thing you said that I wanted to bring up, because this is a good education topic, the 6th, 7th, 8th episode was with a gentleman named Caleb Garrett. Caleb Garrett's the director of development for the Coggin College of Business at the University of North Florida. And we talked about this exact topic. Are we bringing in kids from out of state? Is that an intentional thing for us?
Yeah.
Or are we just trying to be a school for Jacksonville locals? And he said that they're making a huge push to get kids from out of state here. And when they get here, the number, it deviates year to year, but they're between 60 and 70% of the graduates stay in Jacksonville.
Wow. That's amazing.
So I asked, what are we doing to do that? And so what he said, paraphrasing, so please, Caleb, don't kill me. Like, we have companies that oversee the programs at the school, right? So we have the Stellar College of Engineering, right? Well, you can go to work for Stellar while you're in school. You don't have to wait for a summer internship. You can just go to work for Stellar. If you're in a finance degree path, we have 100 finance companies. Like, we will literally build the pathway for you to go to work. So by the time these kids are graduating, we have literally set them up for success with jobs. At this point, though, and Caleb agrees with this. Everybody I've spoken to agrees with this. Anybody with 2 working eyes and 2 working ears will agree with this. Like, we need to upgrade our innovation portfolio as a city. And that probably should start at the college level. But I know we have the talent here regardless for us to go uncover it. And I know you and I are working very hard to do that.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's really good. And it's funny, an observation to kind of dovetail. I don't want to go too much in the military stuff, but it's kind of important. It goes back to intellectual, grabbing that intellectual group, different groups, because it's different groups, right? So when I was stationed as the chief of staff at Fort Benning, Georgia, now Fort Moore in Columbus, Georgia, we'd have conversations with both the city government of Columbus or Chattahoochee Valley in Columbus, and then with Phoenix City, which is on the other side of the Chattahoochee River. Is you have this large amount, you're enlisted in the Navy, this large amount of senior enlisted folks who, at this point, most of them have some form of a career in various certifications. And then you have a lot of 05, 06. So for the group here, so commanders or captains in the Navy or lieutenant colonels in the other services. And the thing was, the question that the commanding general was pondering them is like, what are we not doing as a city to want to keep that talent? Because they have a lot going on. I mean, like Hyundai put a factory there. Cessna has a factory there. Pratt and Whitney does. Oh, by the way, it's the international headquarters for Aflac. I think most of our audience have heard of Aflac. So a lot of that going on, but it was almost like, I hate to use this term, but I'll use it, the brain suck, right? Like we're allowing people. Now, some people are going to go to different places because they love those locations or they got family there. But other folks are just like, I am getting ready to transition. Why would I not want to stay here? Because I could be successful here. We should have that same thought here. One, retain talent, including, because the Navy bases here. I mean, a lot of these folks have very technical skills. And then the other piece of it is, how do we get other folks to want to come here? And I use just a military model to give that description, but I think there's other ways to do that.
I agree.
We need to have folks that want to come here and participate. And yeah, what a great location geographically, economically.
Yeah, I agree. One of my big white whale thing that I'm going to build, like my passion project moving forward is how do we retain the military talent? So for you to bring that up is interesting. So for those who don't know, Kings Bay is, a lot of submarines. So a lot of nuclear specialists, just uber smart people, smarter than I'll ever conceptualize. Right. And then Mayport and NAS, we have a lot of people that can do work with airplanes, ships, etc. But how many of these people, and this is just kind of throwing this out there, but in my mind, I'm thinking, how many people join the military because they came up in a bad situation? They have an opportunity to get good benefits. They have an opportunity to go to school for free. They put in their 4 years. They have all these ideas, all these visions, all these thoughts. So they join the military. They know they're only going to do 4. They're going to get out. They're going to build these things. They're going to create these opportunities. They're going to, build a service, whatever it is that they're intent on doing. How many of them are going back to their hometown or going to a different town or going to a city in which the ecosystem allows for them to thrive better, like Austin, like Nashville, like Charlotte, instead of how do we let them know that you can do everything you want to do in this town?
That's a great point. Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
It's a great point. I mean, you came from a great city. I came from a great city, but those we all served with, my first roommate in the Marine Corps was from outside Wichita, Kansas, and his mother and sister he left at home. That guy literally, he only kept $40 out of his pocket a month. He sent the rest of it home to his mother and sister. And as he said, there was nothing back there for him ever. There's not to say that that's very extreme. I know that, but there's a lot of folks in that boat, right? Like there's nothing back home for me other than my family. Here makes sense, but they got to see that before they exit the military. If you don't see it, then it's not even a factor. You're not even going to think to it.
I agree. That's what I'm saying. How do we make them feel comfortable knowing that this is the place to do it? I think that's what needs to be built. Yeah. It's the chicken or the egg situation, except for we actually know which one should come first. And that's that we need to build something where people are saying, like, I live in Jacksonville, Florida.
I love that. Ironically, I had a conversation yesterday with Harrison Conyers with the Military Affairs and Veterans Department, and he's got 3 pillars. And one of his pillars is, hiring vets or the process of getting vets hired. So I took that down as a note. That's a do out for us to go talk to Harrison. Cause I agree. And it's not the veterans that are, yes, the veterans in extremist issues, like they're almost, either they're homeless or they will be homeless. That's one group, and we should take care of them. But everybody else, I agree. Like, hey, you want to know more? Come on down. Come to this Veterans Center. We're going to talk and we're going to lay this thing out. And then, there's opportunities for education, like a lot of the stuff that Greg's doing, not to say what he's doing needs to be copy and paste, but an example is like, hey, you think you want to go into business? You could have a panel where, some people go up there and talk about it, or this is what a business plan is. And then educational capabilities like, hey, have you thought about going to UNF or Florida State College of Jacksonville or so on and so forth to take some jobs or take some classes or do some online work? Because I think that matters. The steerage matters early in your career for people to make decisions. And I was enlisted just like you were. And I tell you, an E4 doesn't make a lot of money. So that's why I lived in London Town apartments back in the day, because we didn't have much money, and nothing against London Town, but at the end of the day, it was what we could afford, and we were living paycheck to paycheck while I was going to college and my wife was working. So yeah, how can we, lessen that burden so people can thrive? Not give them a hand out, but a hand up, and then a lot of just education. In the
Yeah.
day, you and I have mentioned, and I've told some friends of mine, because they're like, "Hey, I'm watching you on LinkedIn and this and that, and you're like really busy," and I'm like, "I am. I'm busy. I like what I do. I like who I'm doing it with, and that matters to me. And I'm trying to make a difference. And so, though it looks like a lot of work, and it doesn't feel like that, because at the end of the day, I felt like I left it on the field and did what I want to do. And then I'm going to make pivots. I told you 2025, I'm going to pivot and do some things more in the business world, doing things like you and I are collaborating on. That stuff matters.
Yep.
And I think we can collectively, not just you and me, but a greater group of folks can kind of move the needle. And then, do we have to like conquer it all in one day? The answer is no. But you get some little oil spots, as they call it, oil spots, because you see an oil spot, it drops and then eventually kind of spreads out. Get some oil spots of success across the city. It'll all converge at some point, and you'll see catastrophic success potentially.
100%. I want to put a pin in that, because that part of the conversation, I want us to go in that direction. But I wanted to mention something because you touched on it. I think what you do, what PB and Jax is, whatever we can do to like help get the word out. I knew when I started it was important, but I'm going to tell you, I'll give you a story. A very, very prominent nonprofit in Jacksonville that works with veterans, quite possibly one of the 5 most prominent nonprofits in Jacksonville, had no idea about the veteran stand down that took place at the fairgrounds a couple of weeks ago. Didn't even hear about it. And that was put on by the city. You and I got to see firsthand what great work this community is doing in the world of, they're doing what they can to take care of their veterans. I can't talk about that at the legislation level. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I really can't talk about it because I don't know. But look at all these people that banded together to create all those booths and let these veterans come in, eat some food, get a haircut, take a shower, get their benefits started, get mental health services, get gun safety training. And then what my favorite was the ones that are taking veterans who are unemployed and repurposing them by giving them training in a particular field and then turning them loose and starting their career. One of them was in the construction business, right?
I know. We're going to go visit them. It's amazing, right? They're going to give you a life skill. Not a life skill that's going to like make the ends meet, but actually a life skill where you're going to thrive. I mean, you're going to learn HVAC, you're going to learn plumbing, you're going to learn, electrical, and get the certifications.
And they're resistant.
By the way, go ahead.
I was going to say they're recession resistant things too.
Yeah.
You have to have a plumber. Like, those can't go away. So, dude, like the fact that stuff exists in our own communities and nobody knows about it. I mean, nobody. Chris, I didn't know about it before I showed up that day. I'm a freaking veteran. I had a veteran nonprofit, prominent. I'm going to write in all caps when I do the show notes, prominent veteran nonprofit that did not even know that the veteran stand down thing was even happening.
Yeah. And so, I've been going to the Jacksonville Military Veterans Council quarterly meeting. I know you're going to go next week also, or 2 weeks from now. And it's a great way to collaborate, but not everybody's in the room. I don't think everybody can be, but lo and behold, if you get, contact me or you, I'll get them on a distro. They can dial in remotely. But yeah, it's a great way to see what's going on. And then collectively, and you see where there's great, I don't say great redundancy, because there's never too much redundancy in most cases, but you also do see the gaps in capability where we can help folks. And you've had this too, like, folks that are having mental health issues, can be very severe or not so severe. The fact that in that room, there's probably 12 agencies or more with free services, not just for them, by the way, but also
for their families,
like the Cohen Center for their family and their children. And then if their children aren't even here locally, depending on the state they're in, they can do telehealth. And so, the whole saying on Saturday morning cartoons back in the day, knowledge is power, that matters a lot.
Would you say that's why I've asked you this question personally? I want you to answer this publicly. You faithfully served a long time. You got a pension because of it. It's a healthy one. You don't have to work. You choose to. You were talking about your cup being filled earlier by the work you do with the interviews, and you're not getting paid for that. However, I have met an officer who told me out of the start, I'm going to retire and never do anything again.
Yeah.
I am working my ass off to get to this rank, to get to these years, so that the paycheck I get forever is enough to take care of my needs.
Yeah.
You got out and said, screw that. I want to
pedal to the metal, my friend.
I want to take on the world. Why? Why is that important? Like, what purpose does it give you? I just want to hear a little bit about it.
Yeah, Randall. Hey, I appreciate that question. Yeah. And I've mentioned you one-on-one, but publicly I'll say it, we talk about in the military, hey, you got to be a lifelong learner. So let me backtrack a little bit. When I was in school as a young kid, I did very well. I mean, mostly A's and B's. I was a bit of a nerd, if you will. And then later, in high school, I kind of got my priorities, sideways. And I did okay, but like I said, those scholarships coming this way. And then lo and behold, I deploy a couple times and I'm in Desert Storm. And then later I got this opportunity to go seek a commission. I knew education because my mom was a teacher. I knew education was important, but I didn't appreciate it. In education, while the diploma is important, isn't everything. It's the process and the information and the people you meet in the classroom and the knowledge you can take with you to use in your day-to-day and your day-to-day life and then your whole life. And then I realized sitting in the desert, and then later fighting in Kuwait and Iraq after 7 months, Desert Storm, that I could, I saw my officers and I said, I can do what they can do. A mistake on my part. Later, when I went to officer candidate school, my platoon captain asked me, "Oh, are you here because you want to be an officer because of all the great officers you served with?" And I had the stupid answer of, "No, I figured I can be an officer. I just need a degree because I'm just as good as those guys were." So you say that landed me doing a lot of push-ups and pull-ups and flutter kicks. But my point was that I had an opportunity to get educated. I was working on getting myself educated. And then later, through the process of my career, I've been blessed enough to go to school multiple times, thanks to our taxpayers. And I'm a taxpayer too. Yeah, but I had the opportunity to think why deep. I'm a school-trained strategist via the military and such. So I have an appreciation for education. In the Army, specifically, over the last 10 years, we've been saying, hey, you're a lifelong learner, you're a lifelong learner. What we've been trying to beat into folks is that you got to read, you got to write, and you got to do it, outside your work in order to, profession develop. And it doesn't mean you got to read a bunch of military doctrine, but just read anything. It could be fiction, whatever it may be, but to exercise your mind. And Patton always said, for every hour that you exercise your body, you should spend 3 hours exercising your mind. So I took that, a little bit to heart there. So at that point, when I ran across that adage, I went from listening, because I go to the gym every day, well, pretty much every day, every day during the week. And I switched from listening to music to listen to podcasts. So I'm like, hey, if I'm going to exercise my body, I'm going to exercise my mind. I'm going to listen to a variety of things that I think is, good for my brain, so to speak. But I took that motto of being a lifelong learner, said at the end, because some people, Randall, you met people like this, right? Hey, military retirement's the end. Woohoo! It's all over. I'm going to sit back and gain a bunch of weight and just hang out and do whatever. And I was like, nah, man, that's the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2 is going to start. And I want to attack chapter 2. Oh, by the way, your chapters get smaller. So a friend told me chapter 1 is your first long career. Chapter 2 is your second career. Chapter 3, it's between retirement and not being functionally mobile to your death, so to speak. So I'm like, I'll make chapter 2 matter. And chapter 2 matters to me because I want to contribute, man. Going back to your original question, like I want to contribute to my community. I want to contribute to my family. I want to contribute to those people that I touch and that touch me, and be part of this society. And I am, and not to say I didn't study hard or work hard in the military, but I am doing a lot of reading. I'm doing a lot of coffees. I am pursuing people, and I have some civilian mentors that I've asked to be my mentor because I want to make myself more rounded in the business sense and be a contributing part of of a conversation. So ironically, about a month ago, I was in a meeting. There was a number of heavy hitters from Jacksonville and the surrounding area in there, and most of them were multimillionaires, and we were just talking about things. Now they were a little more senior, and 65 or older ish. And somehow the topic of AI came up, and everybody knows how to spell it, A and I, but they don't know what it really means. And I told them, because they asked me my thoughts, and I caveated, like, I'm not an AI expert, but I have done some reading. And I said, here's some things I know that you can look at. And ironically, one of my shows is AI Champions. And so when I talk to folks who are in the AI space, one of their major comments is that the C-suite folks, the senior folks, have heard of it, but they don't understand it. And, so for me to add a little bit more structure to my comments on what I thought the importance of AI for business was, I mean, literally, they picked up notebook and pen and they started writing things down. And I'm like, wow, talk about imposter syndrome. I'm like, wow, see, I got a seat at the table. I have something to contribute here. I'm more than just the guy in the uniform who used to tell people what to do and how to do it and such. So, yeah, I mean, be honest with you, and I mean this in my humble way. I ran an organization with over 3,000 people and with a budget that was hundreds of millions of dollars. So not the same thing, because I always say DOD is made to spend money, not make money. So as a small business owner myself, already having one and getting ready to create another one, so the dynamics of federal service, vice, that of being in the business world is not the same per se. However, there's things that translate over directly. And I think if you have a little bit of emotional intelligence and humbleness, you can bring those assets over to the conversation. So,
yeah. How can people join you and me in this? I think we've spoken personally about the fact that I think we're going to build ourselves a little coalition, a bunch of shakers and movers and people who want to shake the trees and see what falls out of it. But, we're going to meet frequently. We're going to talk about things. We're going to make introductions to people that matter. We're going to be a coalition of super connectors. But one thing I've noticed in this entire endeavor, and since you and I have been speaking, is there's a lot of people out there just like you and me who want to make a change, and they don't know where to start. I think you and I are under the volition that we make it exist first, and then we'll make it pretty later. So,
I agree. We got to start, right?
We got to start. So what can these people do to be a part of what we're doing, and maybe share a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah. So the first thing I say is one, you got to come with a clean heart, right? You can't do it because you're trying to self-promote or you're just trying to make a bunch of money off the back of other people. If you're doing that, then I would say, one, you can build that, but I don't want to be a part of it. Yes, there could be some benefits, as a result of the networking that occurs there. But the networking, if you will, is to do right by the city and by the people of the city, to include the surrounding counties. And I think it's, people connecting with you and I. First thing I would always say is, like, it's not, whoever's got the conch shell can talk per se, but it's got to have a little bit of structure, but not so structured people can't have a voice. So I'm anti-click. I've been around clicks. I've been to, unfortunately, I allowed myself to be in those when I was younger a couple times, and then I've been a victim of them also. So you got to come with a clean heart. You got to want to kind of move the needle organizationally. And then, nobody has the right answer. So, having those voices and see how to move things. And understanding it's going to take time and space. Nothing changes immediately. I think there's some potential quick wins. I think we can provide a voice. If somebody, I'm just making this up, but hey, if you're with the city government or you're with business, whatever, if you want to have a different layer of pulse of what's going on, hey, I know Chris and Randall are available. It's funny when I was at colonel level, then lieutenant colonel commander, when you would go down and talk to the younger soldiers at the E4, E5 sergeant specialist, private first class level, as the boss, you get a different variation of what's going on at the ground level versus, what the leadership's saying. And it's not to say that the leadership was sugarcoating it. It's just their assessment. They didn't see things, kind of understanding at a lower level. And then, as we call in the Army, the Spec 4 Mafia, all the E4s who know each other and what's going on in different units, you can tap from that and go, hey, what's going on here? Is this appropriate or not? And then it's free advice. Nobody's here, we're not charging for it. So you want to know what's going on? Hey, I may not have the direct read, but here's what I'm hearing, and here's what I think's going on organizationally. And then, there's a series of centers of excellence that occur as a result of some of the networking that's already occurring in the city itself. But people's time will be pressed because your time's our most, precious commodity. But I think we can do this in a manner that is not time taxing per se, but purposeful in nature. And then we can move the needle appropriately. And oh, by the way, it costs you nothing, right? But time,
Nothing.
because I'm
Yeah.
not spending any money. You're not spending any money other than time and buying coffee when we meet.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add to it is if you and I don't have the answer, the whole point of the coalition is that somebody in the coalition would have the answer. So just let's build this thing up and let's make it special. I know we have an announcement we want to make, and I'm actually pumped about it.
I'm
but
fired about I'm fired up about that one.
But when we're talking about a pure heart, I don't mind going over time if you don't mind. I would be remiss because of how much it touched me that we don't bring up what we're doing with 100 Men Who Care.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it's a podcast, so I'm the one asking the questions. You're the one that has to give the answers. So, what is it? What does it do? What does it serve? Who should know about it? Who shouldn't know about it? Just it's such a heart focused thing, man. I just want people to know.
So I would coach, hopefully you can put in the show notes. I would coach everybody that's listening to this to go look up 100 Men in Care. 100 Men in Care is a nonprofit organization across the states. I think anybody can open up a chapter. You just got to meet the requirements of it. And so Jacksonville, Chip Yant, and then Brian Langley and have decided with a couple other influential people to start up a chapter here of 100 Men in Care. The concept is simple. A lot of business professionals are very busy people, but if you can afford to give $100 every 3 months or once a quarter, and you can come together for an hour to an hour and 30 minutes, what happens is there's an event where nonprofits are nominated. It's 3 nonprofits are brought forward. They give a 7-minute pitch on what their nonprofit does, who are they, and what their nonprofit does. And then they take 3 to 5 minutes of question. I hate to use the term Shark Tank, but like a Shark Tank type of event. And then from there, the men, if you will vote on which nonprofit gets the pot. So if you got 100 men who care, you got 100 men who give $100, that's a $10,000 cash infusion on the spot right there with that nonprofit. And so we had back in November our first event, which was for a nonprofit here in northern Florida that feeds children, and it just broke my heart to listen to how many children and families go hungry, and then how summer, when I was a kid, summer was great, right? Like, oh, great summer, but these kids, like their major food source is going to school. So, and how they're closing the gap with the families and such. So that was great. And then our last event, which you were at, it was just amazing to hear how, she's taken either battered or abused girls and then making them whole and making them, successful people that would probably end up on the streets are thriving in our community. So for me, I joined 100 Men in Care because God graced me. So I can afford $100 a quarter. And then I'm not too busy not to go out there to participate with those folks. For me personally, that's enough. The other cool thing is I get to meet really cool people that want to contribute, like-minded people. What a crazy concept, who want to be part of this movement. So it's not capped at 100 men. It can be much more than that. Matter of fact, you can have a Jacksonville chapter. You can have a St. Augustine chapter. You can have a chapter of Kalamazoo, Michigan, if you choose to. But the idea of giving back at a nominal cost with a huge infusion of cash just on the spot is gigantic. And then the notoriety. I've seen people there. Granted, we've only done 2 chapter meetings. I've literally seen people be so moved that they literally write a check on the spot to the others that did not get any form of funding. And I know with a number of those organizations, just through my own social media, specifically LinkedIn, that is providing network opportunities to get in front of corporate partners and others that are helping their causes.
Yep. I think you did an excellent job describing that. The only extra thing I'd say is not only were people move the right checks, I literally watched grown men cry in there. It was, it is moving. One of the most popular questions is, if we were to give you the money, what would you do with it? Like, what would it go towards? And the question's asked in a way that we want to understand how much of this money is necessary to move your cause. And so how many times have people said, like, well, it costs us like $800 to fund a bed for a calendar year, for somebody who is trying to overcome addiction. And so your thought is, okay, so if that's the case, this here after this pitch, if we voted for you and you won the money, you could get 12 people off the street. Yo, like it's incredible. I don't know how else to say it, man. It's been, out of all the things you and I have done together,
Yeah.
I'm the most grateful for you allowing me to take part in that and bringing me into the conversation.
I'm
Because
glad you joined. All I could do is just, again, that's an example of what we're trying to do with the other event, which is to shine lights, to spotlight, to go, hey, man, did you realize this? Because I think we continue to get the word out, in that case, but also here with 100 Men That Care, man, that's amazing. I mean, think about it, not you and I, but those organizations are literally saving lives. There's probably people that would have died if these organizations did not take them on. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's no greater feeling than that. It inspired the new nonprofit movement for PB and Jax.
Yeah. Because, I'm going to get weird on you, but, just through my travels across, I've had this conversation with some folks. So is like, with some close friends, like I've seen true hunger. I served in AFRICOM, so I spent some time on the continent. I've been to Afghanistan. I literally seen people starving to death. We're America, man. We're the United States. How can we allow this to happen? We got to collectively as a community do something about this. And then there's got to be a sense of accountability too. So I've had family members that have dealt with addiction and suicide, but and I've seen how specifically suicide destroys a family, but also addiction does too. So for those folks that are going to these programs, which I like about these nonprofits, is there's accountability aspect. Like you got to stay on the program or you're out. So I don't want to put my money on a losing horse. So I like the fact that these organizations are doing that, and nobody wants to see anybody fail. But we also realize, just through my own experience with folks with those issues, that there's a point you can only do so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's no sense in bleeding resources if somebody's not going to accept them.
Amen.
I had to say, how many times did I say to your face at the veteran stand down, looking at the line of veterans that are getting socks and getting haircuts, how the hell do we let this happen?
I know. In the ages, that's the other thing that people don't realize. I mean, yeah, there's some of them in their 80s and 70s, but we had homeless veterans there
in their
20s.
Yeah.
And yeah.
How many times did I tell you, I'm my heart is full that we have a community of people that are trying to help.
Right.
But at the same time, dude, I'm enraged that this is happening. I was muttering curse words in that place, and I shouldn't have been doing that. I was upset. I'm still upset. So yeah, you're right. How do we allow this to happen in America to the common public? How the hell are we letting our veterans do this?
Right. Yeah.
Come on.
Well, that's why at least Jacksonville and these nonprofits are doing their best to help. Again, it's another example of if we collectively put everybody puts an oar in the boat, we all row together, that we can make this better. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what you and I, we got a handshake agreement to do. And so, you as a colonel, me as a second class petty officer, we've been on the front line, and we had a coffee today with somebody, and we have coffees with people every day that are visionaries. And so we were like, well, why don't we create Frontline Visionaries? And why not? I don't get excited often. I'm very excited about Frontline Visionaries. I'll revert back to the fact that I'm the one asking the questions. What is it? What are we doing? Let's announce it to the people. So Frontline Visionaries is a nod towards not just service, military service, but service in general, and then visionaries. So who are those leaders who are the pioneers, the builders? Who are those folks out there that are doing certain things, or what are the subjects that are important? So this is a purposely built podcast for those that are professionals in the business world, in the nonprofit space, in the government space, or just people that have some curiosity about subjects that we're going to tackle. And we're going to essentially twice a month, we're going to do, I call it long taping. So 35 minutes to 40 minutes-ish on a specific topic. One of the first things we're going to tackle is manufacturing in the 21st century with Terry Wynn, which is a big deal, right? Because that talks about culture, that talks about, workforce preparation, upskilling, all these things. So I'm excited about that. And then in between those weeks where we do those releases, we'll do what we call, quick fires or hot takes, 10 to 15 minutes talking about various subjects. I think the first one you and I are going to talk about is LinkedIn. Is it social media or professional networking site? And then kind of tackle that. But the goal of the site is not just to throw out and have conversations about these topics that you would think most professionals would want to hear about, or at least hear you and I talk about, or our guests. But they can take away and go, hey, that's something to definitely ponder, or something I need to think about. But we want a dialogue with the community. We want folks to come up on the net and go, hey, I heard what you said, and you're an idiot, or whatever it may be. Keep it clean, So,
Yeah.
But yeah, like, hey, let's have a community of folks that talk these subjects. These are relevant because, and I mean this in a way. I've been published a number of times throughout my life, and a couple of folks have asked me, like, hey, I noticed you've been published a number of times. What should I write in order to be published? I said, first thing, I never wrote anything I didn't want to read, and I never wrote anything that I didn't think anybody else wanted to read. So I've seen a lot of, we've all been there, right? You start reading this article, you're like, oh my God, who's actually reading this, and who cares? Like, yeah. So the goal is they get in those subjects that those folks in those categories would want to hear about, or want to hear us talk about with our guests. And then we want your feedback. Throw us a hard one, and then we'll try to tackle it. We'll try to find a guest, and then get on there and have a conversation. But I'm excited about it. I think it's very relevant. I think there's a lot of great podcasts. I tell folks, whatever you're doing, find the ones that are right for you, and then pivot when you need to. Totally understanding there's a finite amount of time in your day. One thing that I do is when I work, depending on what the type of work is, I'll throw a podcast in the background while I'm doing work where I don't have to spend too much mental energy per se, and I'm just soaking things in, and I think that matters. So Frontline Visionaries coming to you here real soon, and we're excited about it, and it'll take a community. It's really about the community.
It is.
That's in my opinion, it's global. Anybody can listen to it and contribute to the conversation on or offline.
Yeah, and since it's in person, I promise I'll wear a Jacksonville hat or a Florida hat or something. I'll stop with the Texas stuff. But my publisher said something to me before I signed on the dotted line, and she said, Randall, I need to talk to you about something before we'd sign this contract. I said, all right, let's talk about it. And she goes, if you were writing a book, or if you were writing this book to make money, I'm not going to sign you. And I was like, I get it, but I'm curious. Like, okay, talk to me. And she goes, if you're writing a book to make money, you are going to write a shitty book. If you write a book because you want to inspire somebody, or you want to inform somebody, or the entire premise is to give back in some capacity, the book will sell itself. So I need to make sure your heart's where it's at. And I obviously signed the contract. I've been writing the book. She's great. I can't wait to bring that same energy to Frontline Visionaries. We want to make sure that the people that need to be known are known, and we need to make sure that we can continue to move this city forward. And I'm over the moon about it.
Amen. No, I appreciate it, Randall. As always, appreciate your friendship.
Yeah,
appreciate, man. Your advice and what you're doing. I've learned a lot just, talking to you, and then just kind of watching what you're doing and how you're doing it. As a boss of mine said, you should do everything with a little bit of class, and you bring a lot of class to what you do. Man,
thank you.
Do it. So thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you for that. I very much appreciate you. I'm not here. We're not here trying to make compliments bigger and better than the last person, but you're a current, I know you're trying to shed that identity, but you're a colonel. You were in the military, which is something that was very near and dear to my heart. You've done a lot of great things. You've been a mentor to me. The way we met was fun, and what we've done to kind of capitalize on it's been even better. I'm thrilled you're here. I'm thrilled with what we're about to do together. I'm just thrilled altogether for what we are and what we're about to be. So thank you so much for being here and being a part of this.
Thank you for allowing me to be part of PB and Jax. Love the show. Man. I'm going to continue to push it out, and I know we went long for our audience. Now, this is things we're passionate about, and then I think for those who come in contact with us, you get to see a little bit under the hood about who we are and what we're about, and that matters.
Yep, 100%. I'm sure we'll do it again soon. There's so much more to talk about, but for the hour and 15 minutes you gave me today, man, thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.